Hello and welcome to this Excel training from Let's Excel at Finance. Today we're going to talk about custom formats and how to use them, and we're going to share some workable examples that relate to the finance function. Now you may say, before we get into the details, you may say, well, I understand formats of data. I can go up here on the home ribbon, I can come in here and I can go and select any of these different formats. And you're right, there are a number of pre-built formats that you can use. What we're talking about today is the custom formats that reside here. This is the formatting pane. You can get to here from clicking the drop down arrow here, shortcut key of Control and 1, or the drop down from where I just showed from this drop down list at the bottom for more formats. And it's this custom section that we're going to talk through today. We're actually going to write some code inside of the type here on this custom section to actually build custom formats that we're going to use in these examples. So let's go ahead and we'll start with our first example. Now, before I get into actually setting up these things and explaining what we're going to do through these examples, I want to give you some background as to what is happening inside of Excel and how it's working. So there are 4 parameters that you need to be aware of that pertain to how a display of the data is being given to the end users. The first parameter is based upon positive numbers. The second is for negative numbers. The third is for 0, and the fourth is for text. And we can set custom formats that we want to use for each of those 4 parameters. And we're going to walk through those today. Now, before we go and set them up inside of our custom formats, I need to explain to you a little bit of how Excel stores the data and how it displays the data. So for instance, today's date is the 28th of January 2021. And if I look at that cell, it's obviously formatted in a date format using the month, day, year format type. But if I change this value to a number, I get a numerical number. Why is that? Well, Excel is treating the date as a numerical day from a period of time. So on your computer, we have the 1st of January 1900 is the first day in your calendar on your PC. And Excel uses that to count the number of days between the 1st of January 1900 and the current day, which is this value. So if we do the difference between these two, that's the number of days there has been between the 28th of January and the 1st of January in 1900. So Excel is storing the data in Excel as these numbers, but displaying them as these formats because they're easier for us to understand. That'll be important for us to continue to think about as we go through the next examples, as in some cases we change the way that data is displayed to us, but actually it doesn't change the way Excel then stores that data and uses it for formulas and things like that. I'll explain more about that as we move forward. So let's go to our first example. So this example here, we've got zeros in our data set, and our scenario is that the controller doesn't want to see zeros in their data set. We have a number of zeros in here, and so the controller prefers us to have this hyphen, or I've even worked with some controllers in the past that have wanted us to put things like missing or error, not applicable, things like that in there to help draw our attention. So how can we solve this problem? Well, we could use the find and replace. We could go and find all the zeros and replace them with dashes. We could use the accounting format, where we could highlight the data and change it to the accounting format, and therefore it would replace the zeros with the dashes. The problem with this solution is it right aligns all the data. Notice that now our data is not aligned with our header, and even though the cells are center aligned, they're still aligned to the far right as determined by the accounting number custom format. So we're going to build our own custom format to get rid of the zeros and replace them with the dash. So how are we going to do that? We're going to go into our custom format menu. So again, we can go and do this with a shortcut key of Control and 1. We can click this drop down arrow and go to here. Or the third way is you can select on the drop down here, click on this, and it will bring you out to the same pane. Now we have the cell C15 highlighted, so we see the 185 here. And we're going to come to custom, and we're going to now write some code inside of here to allow us to customize the way that Excel treats that data set. So there's our general, which is our positive parameter. And the way we separate parameters in the custom formats is via a semicolon. So we want the general type for the positive values. We want the general type for the negative values. But for our zeros, we want to put them in double quotes with a dash because we're entering text. Text for the dash needs to be inside of double quotes. And then we're not going to enter any text in here, so I'm just going to leave that blank for now. When we click OK, you'll notice that all the zeros now turn into the dashes. The other benefit of this approach is it now allows us to still continue to control the position and the alignment of those data cells in relation to our headers as well. Let's move to the next example. So in this example, we've got a format of a file for creating employee bonuses. And what we've got is to calculate the bonus, we've got the salary and the bonus percentage. But maybe we don't want to share that with the person that's going to receive this file. So we have a couple of ways we can keep the data in the file, but kind of hide it so it's not visible. So we could go in and we could do a simple change of text, and we could make them white color. But what that means is the data's still there for them to go in and actually go and change it back again. So that's one thing, that's one challenge. So what we want to be able to do is actually to use the custom format to actually make it so it's not visible at all regardless of what we do. So how we're going to do that, we're going to go back to our format pane and we're going to go back to our custom. And then we're going to come up to our title here. And we're just going to put 3 semicolons. You might think that's crazy, why am I doing that? Well, I'm telling each of the parameters, so positive, negative, 0 and text, to display null, just display no format. By definition, what that then does is it hides the data. The data is not there visible. You can change the font, you can change the type of font, you can change its size, its color. It won't display anything in those cells. Now remember what I said earlier about displaying and storage. Display means that there's null value, there's nothing to show because there's no format applied to those cells. But the data still resides there. You can still see as I navigate through the cells and you look up here in the formula bar, you can still see that I'm actually still having the data in the file. So that becomes a bit of a challenge that we need to work around. What I typically do when I use this approach is I'll take the headers away and I'll also move this data set to an area of the spreadsheet that's difficult for someone to find. So in the middle of the spreadsheet over to the right hand side, and I'll also hide this formula bar so it makes it difficult for people to see. But that's how you can hide blank data from your end users. Let's look at our next example. So in this example, we've got some sales, COGS and gross margin detail. And what we want to do is we want to say that our gross margin for these products target is 20%. So if the gross margin for that product is greater than 20%, we want to show text that says greater than 10% or above 20%. If it's on target, we want to show on target, and if it's below, we want to show below. Now, you could do an if statement formula here. You could do an equals if greater than 20%, display text, etc. And you could build a nested if formula statement. But maybe you are sending this to a manager or to someone that isn't familiar with Excel, and they don't want to have to deal with looking at formulas and understanding them. Maybe you want to make it really simple and have a simple formula for them to look at. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up the formula. So we're going to say the margin divided by the sales. Very simple formula. And we're going to customize how we display that data. So the 25%, we want to replace that 25% with the value of above target. The 20% at the bottom, we want to say on target, and then the 15% we want to say below target. So how do we do that? What we're going to do is build a custom format, and we're going to, in this custom format, we're going to set the value inside the parameter that we want to use to determine the value that we return. So for instance, we're going to say if it's above 20%, and we need to put this parameter inside of square brackets. So we're going to tell Excel in the positive numbers, if it's above 20%, we want it to show above target. We then put a semicolon to break to the next parameter. The next one we're going to put in square brackets again and say if it equals 20%, then we want to say on target. Close the brackets. And then in the third scenario, which is the anything less than, we're just going to simply put less than target. Click OK, and there's our text. Now again, this is dynamic. What the end user sees is this formula here and this text. So if I make 34% 12, it automatically changes to less than target. If I make the on target 26%, changes to above target. Of course, you can customize this. There are 3 parameters here: above, less, and equal to, and you can change this interchangeably to get us to those different target levels. Okay, in this example, we're going to talk about dates again. There's multiple different things you can do with dates. I'm just going to show you a few examples here. We're going to come up to a value and we're going to come into our custom pane. And I want you to focus in on this pane, this sample up here as I go through these different examples. So let's start with days first. So if you put a simple day in, it's going to give you the current day as a numerical value. So the 27th, we're on the January the 27th of 2021 cell, so it's going to give you 27. If you put in 3 Ds, you get the day of that date as a 3-letter day. 4 Ds gets you the full day text. Let's take Ds out and we'll put an M in. An M gives you a numerical index for the month, so January being 1, September being 9, for instance. 2 gives you still a numerical number, but it gives you as a 2 digits, so 1 to 9 being a 0, 1, 0, 2, etc. And then 10, 11 and 12 being 2 digits. 3 gives you the short name, 4 gives you the full name. And then we can do year, so we can do a Y, or double Y gives you the 2-digit year. And then 3 or 4 typically is used, gives you the 4-digit year. Now you can combine these as well, so you can do like month, month, year, year, and give you the month and the year. Typically I would do it like this, where you have the month and then the year. You can also do this if you want to build an index, if you want to do year and then the month, which is really helpful if you're trying to sort lists or sort file names, things like that. If you want to do some Power Query that pulls in some data like that, that's a really nice way. We cover that on a future video. That's really helpful. Things like that. So that's the combinations on dates. What I'm going to do is convert some of these into some different formats, just to remind you again, just to show you how this works. So I'm just going to quickly go through and just make some custom formats here for you, and just show you the different ways in which we can customize these. And then we'll just do a combination here of the month and the year, just to give you an example. Okay, next section. So in this section, we want to start to put in some dynamic colors into our data set. So a lot of finance people, accountants, like to show negative numbers as red. And so what we can do here is we can take these numerical numbers and we can customize this by using these different parameters. So our first number we want to be black text as per the cell, and we want them to be general, so we can put our semicolon in. For our next parameter, which is negative numbers, we want to put these as red, and we also want to put them with our parameters on them. So we're going to start off with our color that we want to use. So we want to put red because we're setting a parameter inside of here, and we're going to set the color as red. We're going to put this as general, but we also want to put these inside of this general inside of brackets. So we're saying that whatever the number is, display it as with the parentheses around it or the brackets around it, and then we'll put our third one here for blank for zeros, and then we'll put our last parameter here. Notice that now all the negative numbers changed to red with the brackets around them. And if I make this a -100, it does the same on this cell as well. It's very dynamic and will change to any of the cells that you make a change on. It'll change that format. The next example here is quite an important one. Typically you'll get from your IT teams, you'll get raw data sent to you. So in this example, we've got month 1 sales COGS margin detail in raw numbers. Now these are actually millions of details, right? Nearly $18.6 million of sales for this customer in month 1. Nobody wants to see a report like this, right? It's too detailed, it's too much information. We need to make it into millions or billions, depending upon the size of your company. So we can do that by, normally you might do this in your spreadsheet. You might just have a cell that references that cell and then divides it by the 1,000, million, depending upon the number you have, to get it to the format and the scale that you want. But what if we were to use custom formats and save us having to have these additional cells, these additional columns and formulas that can create a problem for us? Now if you get more customer detail next month, you've got to remember to copy these formulas down, hide these columns so that you just show these ones. That's extra work that we don't need to have to do. We can just format the cells. So how do we do that? The way we do it is we're going to go into our custom formatting cells and we're going to tell Excel how we want it to treat the numbers. So just focus in on this sample number here. And as I type the first comma, watch what happens to the last 3 digits. They disappear. And when I put another comma in, the next 3 digits disappear. So the 1,000 delimiter, the comma, Excel treats that as a display as it wants to round everything up to the nearest 1,000. It takes the last 3 digits away. And it keeps the same decimal place in the sample as what you have on the current file. So over here we have 0 decimal places, so here it's showing us the 0 decimal places, but we can increase the decimal places later on. So for the positive numbers, we want to show them as 19. I want to put my comma in, my semicolon in, sorry, just to close this out. Now these are all positive numbers, so I'm not going to do the same setup for the rest, and I'll just click OK. Now I can increase my 2 decimal places, and I no longer need this format to solve this problem. I can get rid of those. Now, where does this help me? How does this help me going forward? Well, over here I've got month 2's worth of data. All I have to do now is copy, come here and paste as values, and there's my data already formatted. Don't have to have any of these formulas at all. All I need to do is just copy and paste the new data in, and there's the updated format, all nice, ready for me to then go. This also helps me if I link a chart to this data set as well. I can automatically bring this in, and there's my data ready on my charts with all the right keys and axis and scale for me to use. Let's just go to our last example now. This is around using different formats. So there are multiple different ways of bringing in different symbols into our reports. In this case, I'm going to use the bullet point just as an example. But if you go to the Insert tab and go to Symbol, there are all these symbols that are available to you. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. We will go through, and there's a list of them. I've got all these character codes. If you want to reach out to me on Twitter and send me a message with your email address on them, I'll gladly send you the list of all of them for you. But to go to the example here, so we're going to go to the Home tab, go to our format panes as we have been doing, go to Custom. Now in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to paste in. So I copied this symbol that I had, which is the bullet point, and I pasted it in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the @ sign. What that means is it says before you put any text in, apply this symbol first. So let's see how this works. I'm going to apply it to this cell. I'm actually going to copy this down a few cells just for example. I'm going to put in here, grab a coffee, enter. Automatically puts that symbol in there for me. Of course, when there's no text, this doesn't apply the symbol. It only applies a symbol when I put text in here. Watch this video, it applies it in there again. So it's a nice way for you to build a very quick and easy to-do list, things like that. These could be check marks, they could be X's, they could be squares, diamonds, whatever you want to have inside of here. The second example that I want to show is when you're building a report. Typically you'll have a report, maybe you've got 20-30 pages on your report and you want to build an agenda page, and on your agenda page or contents page you've got a list of the references and then the page numbers. Now the problem with this is that these references and these page numbers can be, when they're printed or on a PDF, they can be quite difficult to actually follow along to which page number to go to. So it would be nice if you could link a line across to from the description to the page number. Now the problem is there are different ways you could do this. You could put an underline, but the problem with that is then, well, is that linking into this one or is that the line to this one? Becomes a little bit of a challenge, and then depending upon your printing quality, that can also be a bit of a challenge. So let's go ahead and use a custom format. I really like doing this one. This is what I do on my reports when I send them out to people, is I do it like this. I have the asterisk, the @ sign, which tells me that I'm going to put something in around my text. I'm then going to put the asterisk, and what the asterisk says is keep repeating until you get to the end of the cell, and then I'm going to put period or the full stop. When I click OK now, it now inserts full stops or periods right the way through the end of the cell. Of course I had all these cells highlighted, so now it just copies down through, and if I increase or decrease the size of the cell, or the width of the column I should say, it increases or decreases the format. This makes it really, really nice and easy. It puts it inside the cell, so it makes it a little bit more aligned than if you did a border, and it just makes it really easy when this prints out to people. You can change the full stop, you can put hyphens in, you can put underscores, etc. in there, and they will all work fine. One other thing just to note, on here I had told you about the red color. Again, if you message me on Twitter, I can send you a full list of all the colors that you can use in those parameters. There are more than just the red. If you want to do that, I'm happy to share that with you separately if you're interested. So with that, that brings us to the end of our video on custom formatting. Hopefully you found this helpful. Please give us a follow on Twitter for future updates, and also subscribe and like to our channel to get our future updates.